Welcome to a special edition of the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast with your hosts, Dan and Donna Wilson. In this episode, we're breaking down the judge's dismissal of the Sheriff Bob Norris defamation lawsuit, why it took so long, and what that means. Linda Cook joins us with the facts. A little bit of background on Linda. She's a decades-long resident of Kootenai County, began her political activism in the pro-life movement in California. Eventually, she was named president of the California Pro-Life Council, and in that capacity, she spoke publicly, managed media relations, and lobbied in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. After moving to Kootenai County in 1992, Linda became involved in politics and was hired to serve as a regional representative for Congressman Helen Chenoweth Hage. Linda's married, a mother of two, a grandmother of five, and a great-grandmother. Yep. Linda is also a contributing author and now apparently a field reporter and commentator for Liberty Without Compromise. And with that, Dan, why don't you take it away?
Thank you guys so much for joining us. This is a special episode. It's not live, but we know that what you're going to hear is going to give you the skinny on what exactly is the truth with the first of two lawsuits that has been filed against Sheriff Robert Bob Norris here in Kootenai County. Linda, we're so glad to have you. Before we get to Linda, I think we have a video that we're going to play that kind of sets up what took place this week. This trial has been a long time coming, and this is what reports had to say just a couple days ago.
And new at noon, a judge has dismissed a defamation lawsuit against Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris. Penny Collinson filed that lawsuit last year, alleging that Sheriff Norris made vulgar sexual remarks about her at a candidate forum in Cataldo. The sheriff has called the claims false. Now, according to our news partners at the Coeur d'Alene Press, a judge dismissed the case on a procedural issue, and Collinson can choose to refile the lawsuit.
Where that clip ended up is saying that the judge dismissed the case, but that Collinson can refile.
Yeah. Interesting kind of spin on things. Linda, thanks so much for joining us. So
Sure.
You've been following this from the beginning.
Pretty close.
And we'd like to get your take. You were there at the courtroom this past Monday. Kind of give us a little bit of background and let us know kind of how this evolved and where we're kind of going from here.
I think where we're going from here is very rapidly to seeing this case get on the docket and move forward, because even though what they said was, well, we're dismissing the case, if Bob Norris and his supporters have hit the champagne room, it's way too soon. Because this is like when you throw a boomerang and say, well, that's gone for good. No, it comes right back. It's going to hit you in the forehead if you know how to throw one. I don't know that Bob does, but I do know this is going to smack him, because probably early next week, the Penny's attorneys are going to file. And all this did was clear one bump off the road, and I think it's going to move rapidly. And I got the impression from the judge that he would prefer that. This delay seemed to annoy him. And I think, honestly, that the judicial system in Kootenai County should be just a little bit embarrassed at this point, because they thought so little of this case that they started out by giving it to a judge who was retiring, and then he retired, and I guess they had to get his cake together and stuff and wish him bon voyage. Then they gave it to another guy who sat on it again for a couple of months. And an hour and a half before it's to be heard, he says, oh, I can't handle this. It's like he woke up in the morning and went, oh, that Bob Norris, I can't do this. It's like, who believes that?
So
It's
I
nonsense.
wanted to underline that. Why did it take so long? And you have started to explain that, but why did it take so long from when the incident happened in Cataldo to eventually make it into the courtroom on Monday? And you were sharing that with us, but I think it's important to understand that it seems that there were some tactics being used to stall this process for a very long time. In months, how long had it been in process to where it hit the first judge, then was reassigned, and then kicked out? Like, how long has that been?
Well, they should have assigned a judge when he was served in November.
And that's November 2024.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, she had to go through the tort process first, so that's 90 days. So we were killing a lot of time with that. But to give it to a judge who's soon to retire just seems like they wanted to round file it, just make it go away. And I think what I'm hearing from a lot of their supporters is this is just a hoax. This is a joke. It's a lie. Everyone who's saying he said it is lying. Bob's on record saying that.
So let's go back and frame.
Yes.
We're talking kind of the end chapters.
Yeah.
For those that have not been following this, we need to go back to the beginning. This incident took place during the 2024 campaign. There was a town hall in Cataldo, Idaho, which is just south and east of Coeur d'Alene. And at this town hall, we had Board of County Commissioner candidates, sheriff candidates. And my understanding is it was at this event where Sheriff Bob Norris basically comes up to speak and then allegedly starts in defaming Penny Collinson with some pretty heinous things. We're not going to talk about what he said here, but they were so egregious that she felt like justice was needed and found an attorney, filed a tort claim back around July of last year, July of 2024.
Yeah, probably.
So,
I can't remember.
So Bob
exactly.
Norris was there as a candidate,
Yes.
but he's also the sitting sheriff, which kind of has complicated things, right?
Oh, it has, because, well, that was part of what complicated the judge's decision in having to go with the statute that said it's for law enforcement fulfilling their legal
Right,
obligations.
right.
And so he said, I can't parse out what's a legal obligation, or even if his presence there was a legal obligation.
So what's weird about this is that after the 90-day tort claim window went by and the county did not respond to the claims of damages by Penny Collinson, then her attorney filed the official lawsuit. What was that, around October, November? Right before right before the election.
He was getting ready to file it either late October, early November, but then her attorney was looking at what Bob Norris was doing with county property, county websites, county letterhead, county employees. And he then decided to pull it, refile it with the inclusion of some language that would indicate that he was intimidating witnesses. You know, just part of his
Under color of authority.
So
just part of his law enforcement duties.
breaking this down, at the town hall, he said sexual nature comments towards her, defaming her. She came back, she filed her tort claim, went 90 days. She named Bob Norris as the defendant and the county along with him, because there's kind of a gray area. Was he acting as Bob Norris citizen candidate, or was he acting as Bob Norris sheriff? Now, right after she filed the tort claim, Bob Norris took resources from the county. He took one of his lieutenants who wrote up a press release. And in this press release, we call it, in essence, a bounty letter, where he claimed that everything that Collinson had said was untrue and offered up a reward of $10,000 to anybody who could provide video evidence to refute what she was claiming that he said. To talk about the gravity of this, you have a sheriff that has been accused of wrong, a sheriff that's supposed to protect everybody's rights as found in the Bill of Rights, life, liberty, property, First Amendment. He attacks her allegedly at this town hall where he's a candidate. There's other county candidates that were holding office that happened to be at this event, from my understanding. But he does all this, and then he uses county resources to further bully her. He didn't back down at all. He showed, that he was going to use, under the color of his authority, county property. So at this point, now in my belief, you go from being just a candidate that said things as Citizen Bob to, okay, you're using county resources and the full authority and force of your office to intimidate somebody who's already claimed that you've done wrong. And it didn't stop there. Once the lawsuit was filed after the tort claim ran out, the lawsuit named the fact that Bob Norris was using county resources to specifically target this woman.
Indeed.
And then what does he do after the lawsuit's filed? He comes back out and he does the same thing again on Facebook.
He's looking on letterhead,
yes.
KCSO letterhead. He's looking forward to fighting this false.
He's using the full force of the sheriff's office and its authority to just beat her into the dust.
Yeah.
And what puzzles me is why people stood by, why no one from the county said, excuse me, Sheriff Bob, that's a real bad idea.
Yeah.
What are they thinking? But then when the case is actually served, filed, trying to move it forward, we seem to see obstruction from the Justice Department itself in Kootenai County. And that's what frustrates me. You give it to a judge who's retiring, then you give it to a judge who just blows it off after sitting on it for a couple of months.
Waste time and money.
Yes.
Waste the not only the time of Penny, but also her attorney. None of this comes at no cost.
Right.
It's all extremely expensive. And as you said, why did they wait after the first delay of saying we're switching judges? Why did they then wait until really a few hours before the hearing was set?
Hour and a half. I was getting ready to go to it when I got a call from Penny, and she said they've vacated the hearing.
And it's the emotional turmoil also that's continued to put her through, like you said, dressed and ready to go, and how you must feel waking up that morning that this is finally going where it needs to go, and then an hour and a half before.
Yeah, but in a way, that's the good news. Is that all you have? Run and hide? Hide from this woman? Hide from her attorney? Because her attorney said what they should have done is just recused every judge in Kootenai County right off the bat because he's the sheriff. Yeah. But they did not.
Which caused a delay. So that could have been very purposeful, very intentional.
For someone less determined, it might have been enough for them to say, look, I can't keep pulling the freight on what this is going to cost. Let's just stop. But that wasn't about to happen, not with this attorney and not with this plaintiff.
But in the meantime, another event took place back in February.
Yes, it did.
The now infamous, Kootenai County Republican Central Committee sponsored legislative town hall, where at the town hall, we had some Democratic folks that were unhappy, that were voicing their displeasure. And it appeared that Bob Norris targeted a lady by the name of Borenpole, Dr. Teresa Borenpole. We've talked about this extensively in our previous podcast, so we're not going to belabor it again. But this is kind of a pattern with this guy, right? Violating citizens' rights, and is he acting in his official capacity or as a private citizen? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Earlier, before this latest hearing, it was decided between counsel that they were going to drop the county from the lawsuit as being a co-defendant, right?
Right, and they had to because there was a statute that was both codified by the state legislature and then decided upon by the Idaho Supreme Court. It's unbeatable, but it means municipalities, suing a municipality is almost impossible. And so they took a look at that, and Penny's attorney said, we're just going to stipulate to that. We're not going to die on that hill. So we'll just move forward. But I do feel that the county is going to still be held somewhat responsible, although they can't be named in the suit, and probably not going to revisit that, not when you've got that big a threshold to overcome.
If there is a award of damages to Collinson after she refiles, if she actually gets her trial and goes all the way, who pays? Is it Bob Norris citizen, or is it Kootenai County taxpayers through ICRIMP, which were self-insured in this state?
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't looked into that.
Yeah.
But I would assume that there's a heck of an insurance policy somewhere, although they probably weren't prepared for this kind of civil litigation.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine. So these two cases are similar, but I would believe that anything that's taking place right now by declaring by this judge, this out-of-county judge, that Norris is acting in his official capacity as sheriff, because you can't strip it away from Bob Norris citizen because he's sheriff 24/7. Yeah. I'm curious how that's going to play out in this, what's right now a $5 million tort claim against Norris and the county and the KCRCC and some other actors. But it seems that this is kind of setting everything up for, Collinson's case is setting everything up for the following case. So we should be watching this really close. Now, I understand also at this town hall where Norris allegedly said these things, that we have very credible witnesses, community leaders that were there that have already stated in the lawsuit that was filed originally that they would testify that they heard the things that Collinson said.
That Norris
or
said
excuse me,
to
yes,
Collinson.
that Collinson said that Collinson, that Norris allegedly said to Collinson,
Right.
Including a former Kootenai County sheriff, a pastor. Who were some of the other people?
Well, you had county commissioner people that had a bunch of law enforcement. Of course, they're backing Bob all the way.
Oh, yeah, a sitting county commissioner that also happens to be a special deputy.
There it is.
Interesting.
So, he had his friends in the room. But I do understand that the former sheriff, who oddly enough used to be the sheriff in the county I moved up from in California, got up and left the meeting, and probably had a real bad feeling because he knows the obligations of that office.
Yeah.
And it's probably pretty clear they weren't being met. It's odd that in both cases, the lines are blurred between the exact role that Bob Norris was playing at each event. Because you remember in the second one, in February, he was saying, well, he didn't even know who the security team guys were, even while he was giving them direct orders.
Right.
So it seemed like he was pretty clear about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wiggling, a lot of running for the tall grass, because he's just not being clear. Yeah. But was he incident commander? What was he that day? Or just Sheriff Bob, who everybody knew would handle things well?
And I'm surprised that there has been no public official that has told Bob, cool your jets.
Yeah.
Nobody has bothered to stand up and say, yeah, you are the sheriff. That doesn't make you a king. You are charged with the sacred honor of protecting the people of this county. Yep. Including those that you don't share the same ideations with, same belief system.
Right.
You still protect their rights. But it seems to me that we've heard nothing out of Stan Mortensen, the current prosecuting attorney. You would think somebody at some point would say, Norris, stop using county letterheads to further bully people that are claiming that you're a bully in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. There doesn't seem to be any brakes on this locomotive.
Yeah. Not a lot of accountability. Now, it's my understanding as well that the counsel that was representing Norris for the Collinson case had to recuse himself from being from representing Norris for the new lawsuit or / tort claim that has been filed, because he happened to be in the same room right behind the incident where Norris grabbed Borenpole and attempted to yank her out and threatened to pepper spray her coming out of that auditorium. So this is a very, very interesting time. I think we're going to see what this three-ring circus looks like better in a couple months. Where do you think we're going to go after? I assume Collinson is filing this bond again and filing the lawsuit.
There's no question. In fact, the judge paved the way for her. He explained his reasoning on the dismissal, which was a technicality. And if they wanted to get it dismissed, what they would have done is say what Bob's been saying for well over a year. It's a hoax. It's a lie. It's a campaign season trick. There's nothing of substance to this. They didn't even try to make that argument. And it probably would have been very dangerous indeed, because the judge has read the entire complaint. But he did explain the dismissal. And then he looked at Penny's attorney and said, I'm going to accept $500 bond as sufficient for this action, which Penny's case could also be a $5 million case. Everybody's saying, oh, it's $500,000. She wants $500,000. No, that's a starting point. That's your opening bid.
Right.
That has yet to be determined. So that statute is providing that bond in case the plaintiff doesn't prevail. So it almost sounded like the judge was betting that the chances of Penny doing well are pretty darn good. Because if it looked like it was going to be a nuisance suit, that's his opportunity to say, you better post $5,000 bond. We better get serious about this. But he immediately said, I'll take that $500 for this action. And he just said, I assume you're refiling. She said, yes, Your Honor, we'll be doing it promptly.
So that's why he wanted to dismiss it. He wanted to dismiss it on a technicality. Norris was claiming, hey, they didn't have standing due to filing their bond incorrectly.
Right.
The judge basically said, yeah, statutorily, I can't do anything. I have to dismiss this, but it's a technicality. You can fix this. And then it brings back again this argument, which is Norris is the sheriff. He has to post the claimant, Penny Ann, has to post a bond saying, hey, we're suing law enforcement. But the interesting thing is Norris is an elected representative, and I am like 99.9% certain that he is not Idaho Post certified. So it's curious to me that this judge is holding Norris to the standard as if he was a active law enforcement agent operating as one of his deputies inside the county performing police duties. This has really got me kind of scratching my head going, what kind of a deal do we really have here? So that to me is odd that their argument was, hey, I'm a cop. You didn't file this correctly because you have to do this per protocol. So is Bob Norris a police officer in the state, or is he the elected sheriff? These are the things that the courts are going to probably decide upon.
I think because you have a lot of those confusing moving parts and pieces, it made it easy for Coeur d'Alene Press to come out with that, what you're saying is a misleading headline.
It's highly misleading.
Highly misleading.
Judge dismisses defamation lawsuit against Sheriff Norris.
So it's over, and it's given people backing Norris a lot to play with. So again, just to recap your observations in the court, that you were responding to some of those comments about, it's gone, it's over, that's going where it should have been in the first place. So just to reiterate, why do you believe, after being in the courtroom that day, that's not the direction this is going?
Well, a lot of it was just how the judge responded. I'll accept this minimum buy-in, and I'm sure you're going to refile. And she assured him it'd be very quick, and he was ready to go. He was clear that the statute limited him, and so he really had no choice in the decision that he had to make. But I think this is a man that truly means business. I think the other aspect is the incoming lawsuit that's currently in the tort form is going to give wings to this, because if what everyone intended to do was just denigrate Penny until it looked like she was a Looney Tune and this case had no merit, and then just sweep it under the rug, ignore it, push it in a corner, ignore it. Now we get that February 22nd event, and we've got national, in some cases international, attention on the performance of Bob Norris as sheriff. So this has gotten too big to ignore. And it's kind of a funny analogy, but Oscar Wilde was a hugely popular poet and writer in 19th century England, and he was everybody's favorite. And they all knew he was gay, which was illegal, but he hung out at the best parties. He was everyone's friend until he became embarrassing. And then he went to prison for something that everybody knew that he was doing all along. Yeah. And I think what we're going to see is the more attention that's brought on this, the more that Teflon coating around Bob is going to start to crumble, and people will fall away because they're going to go, oh my gosh, he actually did that.
Yeah.
Because his only protection is what he said, according to Penny, is so vile, no one would believe it.
Yeah.
I know people that were there that heard it firsthand, and they were shocked. In fact, my understanding is the proprietor of that venue was so shocked that he gave and demanded that the MC, if he was acting as MC, I don't remember, but he made certain to allow Penny a rebuttal. So, I don't know that I've really rebuttal taking place at a candidate town hall where questions are being asked of the candidate. So that's curious to me. And then coming back into this, you said that when you were there, if I understood you correctly yesterday when we spoke, that the defendant's counsel did not even physically show up to the courtroom.
No, she videoed in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I do think that because I noticed the judge looking right down at all of us sitting with Penny, and it seemed that he was showing us a lot of consideration. I think this is a sincere, straight arrow kind of a guy. I think we'll see something done because it's too big to ignore now, and her case is indeed substantial.
Now, one of the other things that I took exception when I read the Coeur d'Alene Press article is the reporter, Thornburg, wanted to point out that Collinson has been involved in several defamation lawsuits, also failing at the same time. And again, I don't know the full merits of that. I've heard different things. I don't know what the truth is, and we're not going to discuss that here today because that's for other people. But when it comes to Norris having an existing additional tort claim that's been filed against him. What is wrong with the Coeur d'Alene Press that you seem to be covering for Bob Norris? Once again, if we're going to be neutral in our reporting and you're going to bring up these lawsuits that you claim that Collinson has been a part of, whether or not she was the defendant or the plaintiff, what about Norris? What about the $5 million tort claim that has just been recently filed and the infamous videos that have gone around the world? So
we're just going to ignore that part. Yeah.
So I think they did her a big disservice. It does look like to me that the media is definitely siding with Bob Norris on this.
I don't think there's any doubt, but just for the record, I asked Penny because I said, I'm hearing all these things on social media that you're constantly suing people for defamation. She said, I have never sued anyone for defamation before. This is the first time.
Interesting.
All right. Set the record straight.
Interesting. Any other final comments?
Just that I am finally feeling hopeful because a lot of people have said, you've always hated Bob Norris. Not true. I've met Bob Norris. I've met him at parties, saw him at church. It's always been very congenial. I can honestly say I never voted for the man. I was just a little bit suspicious, but I did not dislike him. And when Penny told me what he'd said to her, I dismissed it out of hand. Somebody at my former church said, the minute you heard that, you ran with it. I said, actually, no, I sat on it for 2 months. I didn't say a word because I didn't believe her.
Yeah.
And Penny said, was it because you just don't believe me or you couldn't believe it? I said, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that anyone would speak that way in public. But for a sheriff to do it is astonishing. And it just sort of left me nervous about a man who could so lose his composure that he would speak to someone like that he sees as an enemy. And we know he sees her as an enemy because he'd already cited that at the Pachyderm meeting.
Kind of like Bornpole.
Yes.
At the same meeting, if I recall correctly,
yes,
he named both those ladies as people that he's not fond of.
So maybe he doesn't have a working list of people he's going to hit. But either he completely lost control and any sense of decorum and committed a vile verbal assault on someone who was just minding her own business, or it was a calculated attack to put her in her place. So my questions are, is our current sheriff vile or is he stupid? Because I don't know how to work that out. Who on earth would shoot themselves in the foot that way?
Well, you do if you think that you have enough coverage.
And he has had it up to this point. Think of who's covered for him.
It sounds like the county commissioner that's also a special deputy. And we're not certain if at that moment he was his campaign manager or not, any of those hats. But there also, from what I've been told, were 2 off-duty deputies that were there as well that are part of the FOP. So we know that the problems with the FOP and their PAC and the money that they throw at keeping Norris in office. But I think Donna and I picked up right before I decided I wanted to run. One of the things that turned me off so much about Norris and why I said that my belief is he's mentally unstable is because of the frequent emotional outbursts that I've not ever seen in any other sheriff in history that I've observed. The frequent crying over mundane little things, the violent responses towards people that don't agree with him. So this really did not surprise me when I started hearing credible sources saying this happened. I stayed away. I was not at that event. And I'm super glad that I was not, because people have said that I basically doctored this whole thing up. I came up with the whole concept and somehow manipulated Norris into making these statements and then so on and so forth. But no, I've been watching from the sides trying to tell people this really is who Bob Norris is, and you need to be very wary of who and what the sheriff is, and he needs to be held accountable because the sheriff is the last line of defense for the people against all forms of government.
I think that last question that Linda brought up, could Norris be that calculated or is he just that stupid? I actually think that that's given him a ton of traction in people not believing that this event ever occurred.
Right.
Because they're like, a guy that high up in office, there's no way there's no way he'd be that stupid.
Right.
And he's a good guy, so he wouldn't be calculated and do that. He wouldn't have a hit list.
Yeah. You just can't make it make sense.
Yeah,
but it
you really
makes
cannot.
it makes me uneasy.
Yeah.
Frankly, my whole involvement in this is concern for Kootenai County and for the safety of the citizens and for the dignity of the sheriff's office, because he is eroding the basis of respect that the sheriff's office has to be perched upon in order to function well with the citizens.
Yeah. Very, very perfectly put. Thank you.
Well, we would love to have you on again as this progresses to get your firsthand reporting. I assume you're going to be at court next time there's another hearing?
Every time there's a hearing.
Well, and didn't you know you're now our field reporter and commentator, Linda? Come on. Well, we just signed you up.
We love you, and we sure appreciate you coming on and
Thanks a lot.
for all your contributions to Liberty Without Compromise.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on this special episode of Liberty Without Compromise. You can catch all the shows and replays on our website at libertywithoutcompromise.com. And for our podcast, listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows.